Hi, second graders. Miss Catrone here. Welcome back to another day of listening and learning. Today, our lesson is from Domain 9, and we are on Lesson 6. The title of our lesson today is The War Begins. Remember, we have been learning all about the Civil War, and today we are finding out that the war is about to begin. So, some things we're going to go over before we start. Let's just review some of the things that we learned yesterday. I know that yesterday can seem like a long time ago, so let's review some of the stuff. I'm going to share my screen with you. You can look at the pictures together. Alrighty, here they are. Okay, so here we have the Battle of Fort Sumter. Now, remember in this battle, it was a battle because the Confederacy, or the Southern states, have just seceded or separated from the original United States. Now, they did so because they wanted there to be slavery and that to be legal or allowed in their states. And they did not like that Abraham Lincoln did not want there to be slavery. So they didn't agree with him and they left the country or seceded. Now, the people of the Union, or the original United States, were governed by President Lincoln, and they they didn't want slavery, but they did want the United States to stay united. That's how they got their name, the Union. So we have here that the Union soldiers were planted at Fort Sumter. Now, the Confederate soldiers wanted control of this fort because it was really important for them, as ships would travel in and out and they would sell their goods to people in Europe and people that they could travel to, and they could sell their cotton, their sugar, and their tobacco. Now, all of these things, when they were selling them, helped their economy and helped them make money. So they wanted control of this fort. Now, the Union soldiers did not want to give up control because they never wanted the Confederate states to secede. So they tried to plant their ground, but at the end, there was a battle. It was the beginning of the Civil War. Today, we're going to learn a little bit more about the Civil War, and I want you to listen carefully to find out whether the Civil War lasted just a short time or whether it was a long time. Alrighty, I'm going to get started, and we're going to move down right here to our pictures for today. All right, here we have a battle scene. Now, a battle scene is where a battle will take place. Here we go. Oh, before I begin reading, I need you guys to grab something to write on. That can be a piece of paper, a journal, something to write on, a whiteboard if you happen to have that at home. And I also need you to get something to write with, a marker, a crayon, a pencil, a pen. And if you want, you can grab somebody at home to listen to this story with you, because sometimes I might have you turn and tell someone next to you. If you don't have anybody next to you, no worries. Me neither. You can write that down, okay? Alrighty, go get those things. If it takes you a little bit, you can pause the video. I'll be waiting when you get back. Alrighty, if you're all set, we're gonna get started. Here we have a battle scene, like I was saying, and the title is The War Begins. A civil war is a war fought between people of the same nation. Usually, in a civil war, two or more groups of citizens in a country believe in things so strongly that they fight each other in order to get their way. The war that began with the Battle of Fort Sumter would later come to be known as the U.S. Civil War, or the War Between the States. It was an awful, bloody time in American history. There have been and continue to be civil wars. Like I said, civil wars are wars between two groups of people in the same nation or the same country. Alrighty, next picture. Here we have a map of the early Civil War battles. After the Battle of Fort Sumter, both sides, the Union and the Confederacy, built up their armies as quickly as possible. Remember, the Union is the northern states and the Confederacy are the southern states that seceded or left the United States. Throughout the North, people wanted President Lincoln to do whatever he could to end the war quickly, and most people assumed that the war would end quickly. After all, the Union had more people, more factories, a larger army, and a powerful navy. The first true test between the armies of the North and the South came in July of 1861 in the state of Virginia. So right here we have Virginia. It's a nice, beautiful, big state. Virginia is home to the city of Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy at the time. Today, Richmond is the capital of Virginia. Virginia also touches Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. So you might see Washington, D.C. right over here. Now, on a map, the capital is usually marked with a star. So that's how I know what city is the capital of that state. Here we have Washington, D.C. 3 months after the Battle of Fort Sumter, thousands of Union and Confederate soldiers met in Virginia for the first major battle of the Civil War. Now, were the Union soldiers fighting for the North or the South? You can write down or tell someone next to you. Yeah, the Union soldiers were fighting for the North. So does that mean the Confederate soldiers were fighting for the North or the South? Yeah, the Confederate soldiers are fighting for the South. Good job. As President Abraham Lincoln was commander and in chief of the U.S. Army, also called the Union Army, the President of the United States is always the commander in chief, and that means just he's in top command. He's in charge of the army and other armed forces. That's one of his jobs as president. He decided to try and end the war quickly by sending his army to destroy the Confederate army in Virginia and capture the city of Richmond. So it was decided that a large Union army would invade Virginia. The Union army moved toward the town of Manassas, where there was a small river called Bull Run. Right, if I look at my map here, I see Manassas and this small city called Bull Run, and that's where they're going to invade. Now remember, the Union Army thinks that they are going to be a sure win for this battle. They think they have more soldiers, and if they just win this one battle, we'll end this war nice and quick. No harm, no foul. Let me find my place. Okay, we're going to move down to the next picture. Here we have a picture of General McDowell and the Army of Potomac. The plan was for the Union Army to crush whatever army the Confederacy tried to put in its path and then march on and attack Richmond. Remember, Richmond is the capital for the Confederacy at the time. The Union Army had 35,000 soldiers, which up to that day was the single largest army ever assembled in America. The Union did not realize, however, that the Confederate Army, or the rebels, as they were also called, had roughly the same number of soldiers in the area. Guys, remember that rebels means the word, rebellious, to rebel means to not follow the path and to do your own thing. Why do you think the Confederate Army called themselves the rebels? You can write it down or tell someone next to you. Why do you think they gave themselves the name the rebels? Yeah, because they were rebelling against the United States. They seceded. They wanted something else, and they were going to do their own thing. Yeah, that is how they got the name the rebels. A large Confederate force had marched within 25 miles of Washington, D.C. They set up camp at the town of Manassas and waited to see what the Union Army would do. That July, the Virginia summer heat was so hot, it was sometimes hard to breathe. Union soldiers, many wearing heavy wool clothing, marched slowly for 2 days over rolling farmland and across shallow, muddy creeks. The Confederate soldiers waited for them at Manassas. Later in the war, soldiers of the Union Army wore blue uniforms and soldiers of the Confederate Army wore gray uniforms. These colors were symbols for the Union and the Confederacy. By July 21st, it was clear that the armies were going to clash or collide in an intense disagreement. The only question was, who was going to fire the first shot? Make a prediction about who do you think is going to fire this first shot in the American Civil War? Will it be the Union or will it be the Confederacy? You could write down your prediction or tell someone next to you. My prediction is that it's going to be the Union because they think they have the bigger army. They think they're going to win. So they might as well fire the first shot and get this whole thing over with. Many wealthy citizens from Washington, D.C., including members of Congress, traveled with the Union Army on its march from the Capitol. Like so many others, these civilians, or non-soldiers, expected a quick battle, a rousing victory for the Union, and a quick end to the Confederate cause. These civilians wanted to witness the Union's victory and the Confederates' defeat with their own eyes. Cannot believe people came to watch this battle. Here, actually, we have a picture of a family that's watching the Battle of Manassas. Now imagine what it might have been like for those civilians who traveled from Washington, D.C. to Manassas to watch the battle. They had driven their carriers and packed nice picnic lunches. They brought telescopes so they could see the action. Some had even brought their wives and children to watch history in the making. Imagine a family watching the battle unfold atop a grassy hill. Would you guys have wanted to watch this battle? I think it might have been exciting, but I think it would have been pretty scary to be that close to a battle. Civilians would watch from behind a line of Union artillery, or cannons. As the Confederates marched across the field, the Union guns opened fire. Were your predictions correct? Did you guys think that the Union would be the first ones to fire ammo in the battle? Did you think they would be the first shot? Smoke filled the air so that the civilian observers could no longer see what was happening. They could not see the disaster that was unfolding right in front of them. But something they heard gave them an idea that the battle was not going to go as Lincoln and his generals had hoped. What do you guys think they heard? Maybe they heard gunshots. Maybe they heard a lot more people than they expected. Let's find out. All right, here we have a picture of the Confederate attack. The Confederate Army did not run away as the Union had hoped. Instead, amid the firings of cannons and rifles, a new, terrifying sound emerged. The sound that would come to be known as the rebel yell, and it would haunt Union soldiers for years to come. It was a high-pitched scream, a battle cry, which the Confederates yelled out as they attacked the Union Army. So the sound they were hearing is a battle cry or a yell. That is not what I predicted. That's interesting. Despite careful planning, almost nothing went according to the plans the Union Army had made. The Confederate cannons were older and less powerful than the Union's cannons, but the Confederate soldiers firing them seemed to have more skill or ability. All right, the next picture we have here is a picture of Stonewall Jackson. I wonder who he is. Several of the Confederate commanders seemed to have more skill than the Union commanders as well. One commander named General Thomas Jackson showed particular courage, that means bravery, and intelligence. That day, General Jackson earned the nickname Stonewall Jackson because he stood like a stone wall against the Union attack. Who else have you learned about that has a nickname? Oh yeah, we learned about Harriet Tubman and how her nickname was Minty. Now we're learning about General Jackson and how he got the nickname Stonewall Jackson because he was so brave and stood strong like a stone wall. Stonewall Jackson went on to earn a reputation as one of the most brilliant soldiers in the Confederate Army. Though he was killed halfway through the war, this painting shows him on his horse at the Battle of Manassas. Alrighty, here we have the Union retreat. I wonder what the word retreat means. If I look at my picture clue, it kind of looks like they're running away. I wonder if that's what retreat means. Let's find out. Stonewall Jackson and the rest of the Confederate Army won the First Battle of Manassas. By late afternoon, the Union Army broke apart and retreated, or went back towards safety of Washington, D.C. So retreated it means to go back to safety. The civilians who had come to watch the battle were shocked to realize that they were in the path of the retreating Union Army. Retreating can also mean running away. The road back to Washington, D.C. quickly became clogged as the soldiers running and on horseback ran into panicked civilians trying to flee in their carriages. Flee means to run quickly from danger. So the civilians watching the battle and the Union soldiers all wanted to retreat or run away to safety, but the roads became overcrowded and kind of caused a roadblock. I wonder if that's going to be a problem. Here we have battle destruction. Thousands of Union and Confederate soldiers were wounded or captured in this battle. Hundreds of men on both sides died as a result of those wounds because doctors didn't have the equipment or training then that they have today. The landscape around the battlefield was also devastated or destroyed, with roads, bridges, and entire hillsides in ruins. This image shows the destruction caused by the battle to both people and land. A few days before, this was a lush green farmland. Now after the battle, it's all destroyed. This was just the first of many, many battles in the years the Civil War took place. And the battles would be much bloodier in the months and years to come. After that first battle, which was called the First Battle of Manassas, or the First Battle of Bull Run, President Lincoln and others in the North realized that this Civil War would not be easy to win. The Union realized that they would need a much larger army, and more important, they would need to prepare for a much longer war. In fact, within a year, many people would be wondering whether the Union would be able to win the war at all. Do you guys think the Union or the Confederacy will win the war? You guys can write down your predictions. This is the last part of our story. Who do I think will win the war? My prediction is going to be on the Union, but we'll have to find out tomorrow. Alrighty guys, this is the part that I really need you to have your pencils and papers for. So if you don't have those yet, please pause my video and we're going to go over some comprehension questions. Comprehension is just a big word to see how well did you understand our story. Alrighty, question number 1. If you want on your paper, you can write a 1, dot, and then the answer. If you're sitting next to someone, you can turn and tell them. Why was the war that you heard about in the read aloud called the U.S. Civil War, or the war between the states? How did it get that name? I'll give you 30 seconds to answer. Why was it called the U.S. Civil War, or the war between the states? I'm going to set a timer so I don't forget. You guys have some time left, don't worry. Yeah, so it actually got the name of the U.S. Civil War, the war between the states, because two parts of the country in the same country were fighting against each other. So in this particular Civil War, it was the northern states or the Union, and the southern states or the Confederacy, and they were fighting against each other. Alrighty, question number 2. You can do a 2, a dot, and then a dot, and then your answer. You can turn and tell someone next to you your answer to number 2. Why did Lincoln and many people in the North think that the war would end quickly? Why did they think the war would end quickly? I'll give you another 30 seconds to write that down. Why did they think that the war would end quickly? Yeah, the Union said, we have more soldiers and our president is in charge. He's the commander in chief of the army. We should surely win. All right, we're only going to do 3 comprehension questions today. So your third and final one is this. What do you think President Lincoln will do now that he has realized that the war against the Confederacy will not be easily won? What do you think he's going to do now that he realized the war against the Confederacy will not be easily won? How would you prepare? You can write down your answers. I'll give you 30 seconds. Alrighty. So maybe he's gonna try to get more people to be part of his army. Remember, he thought he had the way bigger army in the Union, but it turns out their armies were just about the same size. So maybe if he's going to win, he's going to need a bigger army. Maybe he's gonna need different weapons to win too. So excited to see what you guys wrote down. Alrighty, so as always, we have a vocab lesson, and then I'll get you right into your journal for today. Our vocab word for today is the word civilian. Now, I'm going to say it civilian, and I want you guys to say it. Good job, civilian. Alrighty. So, in the read aloud, you heard it used in this sentence. Like so many others, these civilians or non-soldiers expected a quick battle, a rousing victory for the Union, and a quick end to the Confederate cause. Civilians are citizens who are not in the military or on a police force. So you and I would be considered civilians because we're not in the military and we're not in a police force. Let me find, police officers and firefighters protect the civilians in places where they work. So civilians are people who are not police officers, not in the army, not protecting us, not firefighters, but the police officers and the firefighters protect the civilians. Have you ever heard anyone use the civilians? Try to use the word civilian when you tell about it. You guys can write this down. Have you ever heard that word called civilian? I'm going to pause our video and you guys can write down your thoughts. Alrighty. Yeah, maybe you could say I'm a civilian, or my mom is a civilian, because we are not in the army or the police force. Or maybe they are and they wouldn't be a civilian. I'm not in the army and I'm not in the police force, so I'm not going to be a civilian. Alrighty, guys. So today for your journal, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be writing anything that you learned about the beginning battle of the Civil War. You can talk about what the two sides are. You can talk about who thought they were going to win. You could tell me who fired the first shot, and you can also tell me if the battle lasted, if the war was going to last a short time or a long time, and how do you know? All right, guys, I'm so excited to see your journal entries, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget to turn in your journals. I can't wait to read them. See you tomorrow. Bye, guys.